Hello students, welcome to the lecture series of auditing. Today we shall be taking up unit 3rd, and under unit 3rd we shall continue our discussion on internal controls. Under our previous 3 lectures we have already learned in length about the internal controls and also about the computer information system, that how under CIS environment internal controls are being taken care of. Today we shall continue our discussion on the EDP environment, and we shall learn about audit trail and miscellaneous topics in relation to internal control. Among it, the first one is the meaning of audit trail. Then we will learn about the advantages and disadvantages of using CAT. CAT means the computer assisted audit techniques. They are being used in a controlled environment where computerized systems are there. Then organized structure in CIS environment, that how the organizational structure would be there, how the data will flow, what's the flow of the information in a CIS environment. That means that how internal controls are being in place under such environment. We shall also learn about the nature of processing under a controlled environment where everything is computerized. Then we will learn about the meaning of internal check, and we shall try to differentiate between internal check and internal audit. We shall also learn in detail about the requirements of internal controls at a service bureau. So first of all, let us take up the meaning of audit trail and how it is being useful. It refers to a situation where it is possible to relate one-to-one basis the original input along with the final output. That means in relation to the output, we should have the trail of the input. There should be a one-to-one correlation among input and output. Thus, audit trail can be defined as those documents, records, journals, ledgers, master files, etc. that enables an auditor to trace the transaction from the source document to the summarized total in accounting reports or vice versa. So, in a way, audit trail is a documentation of the data entry which has been passed, and it is a detailed transactions record. We will record it in a journal, we will have the ledgers of it. So, overall one-to-one basis can be established for any transaction which is being recorded in a computerized system. Take for example, sequentially numbered sales invoice copies would normally be listed in register for day book and subsequently filed either in numerical or chronological sequence. So, wherever we have a summary, obviously they would be somewhere being posted or they being generalized. So, this serial number can be cross referred with the original input data. So, the chronological data which we have in hand is the output, and its one-to-one relation can be established with the input by the reference number which we have in the summarized sheet. If it could be possible to trace a particular invoice from the day book to the original file or vice versa by reference to the number or the date of invoice, as we have already discussed. By date of invoice also we can trace out the transaction, or by the cross reference which is being written over both the documents, that is input and the output summarized form. So, that is what we call the audit trail, which is being useful for an auditor while conducting the audit. Now, let us understand one very important concept in relation to the CIS environment, that how computer assisted audit techniques would be useful for conducting audit where audit is done through the computer. That means there is complete computerized process, and what auditor is required to do is that he has to use certain techniques to do the audit. So, CAT, which is commonly known as computer assisted audit techniques, refers to those auditing techniques that takes assistance of a computer for being applied to a audit in a computer environment. So, they are auditing techniques only, and certain programs are being drafted in such a manner that audit techniques can be applied to conduct an audit on a particular procedure. The use of computer assisted audit techniques may be required because there is a complete absence of input documents because everything is being computerized, lack of visible audit trails and lack of visible output. So, where there is no visible input or output, there are all entries which are being present in a computerized system only. The backups are again take up in a computerized format. The hardwares and softwares are so prepared that it's not possible to trace out the audit trails. Under that scenario, what happens that certain audit programs are being drafted in such a manner that they can be used as auditing techniques to carry out the audit under the CIS environment. Now, CAT enables the auditors to save time by examination of data stored on computer media. So, here the media has changed. Rather than manual medias, what happens that computer medias are there. So, on such medias, what happens that with the use of CAT techniques, there can be a better examination of the data being stored and it will save the time of auditor. That is why we say that CAT enables auditor to save time by examination of data stored on computer media rather than on printouts or other documents, and in some cases to conduct tests which cannot be done manually because there is no visible evidence or audit trail. CAT can be used for both compliance and substantive tests. So, a question comes to the minds of the student that are CAT techniques useful only for this substantive test? No, they are being useful under compliance test also. So, wherever we have to put reliance on the internal control system, CAT techniques can be used. Wherever the testing of the documentation and the transactions is to be done, again we can go for the CAT techniques. Substantive test here means the testing of the transactions and data. We will go for vouching and verification. These aspects can also be covered by CAT techniques, and internal control testing can also be possible with the help of CAT techniques. So, overall it is such a technique which is being used by the auditor where he can go for a complete audit with the help of CAT techniques being assigned to carry on the audit work. CATs may be used in performing various auditing procedures, including the first one is test of details of transaction, which is commonly known as substantive test, and balances, for example, the use of audit software to test all or a sample of the transactions in a computer file. So, under test of details of transaction, we can go for the CAT techniques. And second one is the analytical review procedure. Analytical review procedure, as we have already discussed in our lecture 1 on the basic concepts of audit, where we said that analytical review procedures are those procedures where the trends and ratios are being checked and they are being audited by the auditor. So, using CAT techniques, again we can go for analytical review procedures, and the use of such softwares would be useful to identify unusual fluctuations in items. So, again under CAT, a different feature or a peculiar feature of analytical review procedure is that unusual transactions can be identified. CATs may be used in performing various auditing procedures, including these two also: compliance test of general EDP controls. General EDP controls we have already learned in our previous lecture. They are the overall control of a internal control which are being in place under the CIS system. So, compliance test can be conducted under the general EDP controls using CAT techniques. For example, the use of data to test access procedures to the program libraries. D is compliance test of EDP application control. EDP application control means that how accounting procedures are being applied in a CIS environment or computerized environment. So, compliance test under EDP application control can be conducted using audit techniques which are known as CATs. Under it, how we will go for the CAT techniques: the use of test data to test the functioning of program procedures can be there. So, all these would be forming the part of the use of computer assisted audit techniques to carry out the audits in a computerized environment. Now, let us understand certain CADs which are being used in audits. First one is the audit software. Audit software consists of computer program used by the auditor as a part of his audit procedure to process data of audit significance. Now, under audit software, again there can be different types of audit softwares. When we are talking about audit softwares, it's one of the type of the CADs which is being used. So, under audit software, again we have different sort of programs. There can be utility programs, package programs. So, first of all, let us understand what do we mean by the package programs which are being used while conducting audit of a business entity. Package programs are those computer programs designed to perform data processing, which include reading computer files, selecting information, performing calculations, creating data files and printing reports in a format as specified by auditor. So, under package software, everything would be designed so as to perform the audit in the manner it is being useful for the auditor. That means from the from the selection of the information till the generation of the report and being used as a printout. So, under package program, everything would be designed as per the need of the auditor. Then second one is a purpose written programs. These are the computer programs designed to perform audit tasks in specific circumstances. The previous one, that means the package program, were of the general use, while the purpose written programs are used for specific circumstances. These programs may be performed by auditor or by the organization or by an outside programmer engaged by the auditor. In some cases, the programs existing in the organization may be used by the auditor in their original or in a modified state, because it may be more economic and effective than developing independent program. Third one is utility program. These are used by the organization to perform common data processing functions such as sorting, creating and printing files. These programs are generally not designed for audit purposes and therefore may not contain such features as automatic record or control totals. So, in all, there are lot many audit softwares which can be used by the auditor depending upon his need and the necessity for doing the audit in a computer aided techniques or in a computerized information system. Now, let us understand one more feature, that is known as test data. Test data technique is also being used for conducting audit under a computerized environment. Under it, what happens that they are being used in conducting audit procedures by entering data into the computer system of the organization and comparing the results obtained with predetermined results. For example, there are certain predetermined results of the organization, and when the data is being put in a test data technique, we will compare results of both the datas, one which is pre-generated or which are already being generated and one which are being generated with the use of test data techniques. For example, test data are used to test specific controls in computer programs such as online password and data access control. Now, the test transactions selected from previously processed transactions, preferably historical data or data treated by the auditor to test specific processing characteristics of the organization's computer system. Such transactions are generally processed separately from the entity's normal processing, and test transactions used in an integrated test facility where a dummy unit is established and to which test transactions are posted during the normal processing. So, either we can take up a historical data or a data which is being specifically used for the test purpose, or we can go for a dummy unit to do the test transactions of the datas. Now, what is the benefit of using the CAD techniques? First one is increase in the effectiveness and efficiency of audit procedures, because we are having computer assisted audit techniques. So, obviously there will be saving of time and the procedure would be procedural. There will be lesser chances of any error as the system is pre-written and it is being modulated with the help of the auditor only. Saving in time, the auditor can save time by reviewing the CIS control through CAT than through other audit procedures. So, again there is saving in the conducting of compliance procedures, and in turn it will help us to conduct the substantive test in a much faster manner. Then effective test checking can be there. A sample would be taken up which will represent the population, and such sample would be a sample which will be effective to test the entire mechanism, and it will be useful for the auditor to carry out the test on such samples. Now, what is the disadvantages of using CAT? Wherever there are advantages, there are again chances that every technique would be having its own disadvantages. So, on the CAT techniques, obviously the first problem is the lack of the audit trails or documentation. So, this problem we need to face while conducting the audit using CAT. So, let us highlight certain important disadvantages associated with CAT techniques. First one is audit trail disappear, as we have already discussed that input and output would be in a computerized format. So, it is not possible to do the documentation in physical form. Lack of visual observation, because everything is automated and backups would also be there on a computer media. So, again it will be a problem where the auditing is done around the computer, audit techniques would fail, and wherever there is lack of knowledge of computers by the auditors, again it will not be possible to use the CAT techniques. Then internal storage, it is difficult to determine procedures followed. However, with the passage of time there are chances that the entities would define their backup programs and they would take up the storage program in a much better fashion, and data storage would be given equal importance as that of the data security. Then changes in programs could be there which will result in the stake of the security of the data, and again the CAT techniques would not be so useful to trace out any modification which is being made up or any change which is being done if proper internal controls and the security checks are not present in the computer programs. Then system jargons, that is the major problem which is being faced by the CAT techniques. There are certain source codes which are being assigned while doing the input of the data. So, it is very difficult to decipher what is the code and how it is being given as an input into the system. So, let us understand what do we mean by system jargon. The source code listed to the auditor may not agree with the object code used by the system. So, wherever there is a discrepancy or there is a disagreement between the source code and the object code of the auditor and the system, then these techniques would be a utter failure. Now, let us understand one more concept, that is organized structure in a CIS environment. In a CIS environment, an entity will establish an organizational structure and procedures to manage CIS activities. So, overall the structures would be same, however, with the change in the environment where the computers are being used as a source of the information systems, there will be a change in the organizational structure. So, let us understand the characteristics of CIS organizational structure. What does they include? They include concentration of functions and knowledge, concentration of programs and data, usually in machine readable form, either in one computer installation located centrally or in a number of distributed locations. Now, what is the nature of processing under a CIS environment? First one is absence of input documents, that is order entry in online system is there. So, there is lack of input documents, or the generation of the accounting transactions by the computer programs, that is automatic calculations of discounts would be there. So, again they will create the absence of input documents. Second one is lack of visible audit trail, which we have already discussed in length. it precludes the auditor from visually following transactions through the computerized accounting system. Lack of visible output may necessitate access to data retained on files readable only by the computer, because output is again being stored on a computer media. So, there is lack of visible output, hence it becomes a problem under such processing, and ease of access to data and the computer program may increase the potential for unauthorized access. So, data security is again a question to be dealt very precisely and in a very secure manner. Now students, we will deal with another topic which is known as internal check. It is very related to the internal control. So rather than getting confused with internal check, internal control and internal audit, we shall go with the meaning of internal check and learn it in detail. Internal check is a method of organizing the system of bookkeeping and arrangement of staff duties in such a way that work of one person automatically checked by another, and the possibility of error is minimized unless there is collision between the clerks. So here we can say that internal check is quite lesser in its scope than the internal controls, where internal control is an environment where the controls are being in place. Internal check is again a method whereby we check or organize the system of bookkeeping, that how internal control in relation to bookkeeping and the segregation of duties of the staff is being managed. So what are the essential elements of good system of internal check? Let us understand them. The first one is existence of check on the day-to-day transaction. Secondly, which operates continuously as a part of routine system. That means the internal check will be there continuously as a part of routine system. Every day such check are to be there into the system, and whereby the work of each person is either proved independently or is made complementary to the work of others. Now let us understand the general considerations which are to be kept in mind in framing a system of internal check. First one is that important aspects of the business control by employee come under the review of another. Secondly, duty of staff should be changed from time to time without previous notice, so that there are lesser chances of committing fraud or any misappropriation of the data. Every member should be encouraged to go on leave once in a year, so that there will be satisfied employee and there should not be any chaos or collision in the employees, and better internal check can be performed. The custody and the accounting function of the asset must be responsibility of two separate persons, so that there can be a internal control check over both of the persons who are responsible for the custody and accounting function of the assets of the organization. Then there is a need to prevent the misappropriation of cash. Some mechanical instrument must be used in the business organization whereby the misappropriation of the cash can be controlled, and the triggering positions would be there which will show us that certain chances are there or a misappropriation has taken place, and it could be very easily detected out. There must be physical verification of assets at regular interval. So there should be an internal check system that with a regular interval the assets would be physically verified. There should not be a chances of damage of the assets or the loss of the assets. The budgetary control and the standard costing should be used in the business organization, whereby the cost can be under control and proper standards of the cost can be determined and variances can be analyzed. Procedures should be laid down for periodic verification and testing of different sections of the accounting record. And lastly, the established accounting procedure should be reviewed periodically. Now students, we are summing up our lecture of today. Under today's lecture, we have learned the importance of Audit Trail and how it is being useful. Then we have learned about the CIS environment, where there are certain computer assisted audit techniques are being used by the auditor to conduct the audit in a computerized environment. Under it, we have learned in detail about the audit programs which are being used by the auditor as well as the test data. Again, under audit programs, we have discussed about the package programs and the pre-written programs as well as the utility programs. And test data are being used where it can be used either with the historical data on a business entity or with the use of the dummy units. We have also learned the importance of the internal check and general considerations to be kept in mind while applying any internal check. With this, we are ending up our lecture of today. Thank you.